Hello, I'm Daniel Capon with IBM Cloud, and today I'd like to take you through a short demo of the use of UrbanCode Deploy and Rational Test Workbench to continuously deploy and test our application. The application we're working with today is a simple container-based application running on Docker Compose. It also runs on Kubernetes, but for our example today, we're going to use Compose. We're going to use UrbanCode Deploy to deploy the application out, deploy YAML files as well as configuration files and so on. We are going to use GitLab to store the source code for the YAML files and the containers. And we will use Rational Test Workbench to test our application to make sure it works properly. Let's start by looking at our tests in Test Workbench. Over here, I have a Windows machine running Test Workbench. I am in the performance perspective here, and I've got a performance schedule here called smoke test, which runs a couple little scripts, runs for a little while. And then we have requirements here, and the requirements allow us to set criteria for a pass-fail for our performance test, and the results of that will show up in my UrbanCode log. If I switch over to my web UI functional perspective, I have a couple test scripts here that interact with my application. You'll see if I click on any one of the steps there, I'll see the screenshot below of what happens when I run this test. And finally, I have API tests over in Rational Integration Tester, and I run these various API tests against the API or the REST interface of the application. And those are wrapped up in a suite here called smoke tests. So let's step over to UrbanCode Deploy and take a look at the last time the deployment was executed. Over in Dev here, I can click on History, and I see here that the last deployment had a failure in it. So if we click on the View Request here, we can see the various steps it went through, pushing out various containers. Here we actually push out the YAML files to Docker Compose. It looks good. API tests ran okay. Functional tests, we have some problems there. Performance tests look okay. So let's dive into those functional tests. And we see that we are running some functional tests in Web UI Tester, and we're having some issues there. So let's take a look at that log. So if I click here, I can go to that RFT log, and I see here that the application, well, first of all, we're looking at the catalog here, and it looks like the catalog is not showing up properly. So that's a problem. If I go farther down here, I have some additional tests, and again, these are failing as well. It's not finding my orders, and we don't have any orders. So this is one that I know of for sure, is that the team that's working on the orders part of this application, they are a couple weeks behind, so we have stubbed out the calls to the order. So we have a stub or a mock or a virtual service that replaces that response from the orders container so that we can have at least something show up in our interface so that we can test against it. So I need to change that. It looks like in the dev environment we're not turning on those virtual services. And then the other problem we have is with the catalog not showing up. So let's take a look at that. So back to UrbanCode Deploy here. Let's first go into our process for deploying out. So I look at components here, and I go to functional test, and I take a look at that process. I can see that we check the environment and we turn on the stub. So that's the start scenario here, but I'm only turning it on for sit. So let's add dev to that environment as well. We want to make sure we are turning on the virtual services for dev as well as sit. So this is what a process looks like in UrbanCode Deploy. It's simply a matter of dragging and dropping all the various things onto the diagram here. So I could easily just drag in and run performance tests and draw a line from this to this and so on, and they all start to show up as part of the process. So we're not going to mess that up right now, but this is the way it's set up right now. We run our functional tests, and if they fail, we set the process as a failure. Then we continue on to unzip the logs no matter what. So you see the pass and the fail here, and the gray means no matter what, we continue on. And then we turn off the virtual services, and we'll finish that test. Okay, so that's what process looks like. So we're just going to save that process out. You'll see here that we saved the versions of it, so we can easily go back to an earlier version of the process or take a look at it and see what we were doing differently. So now let's switch over to GitLab. And our Docker Compose YAML file here, we have problems with the catalog. And oh, there it is. Okay, so the catalog database is not set up properly. So something UrbanCode allows us to do very easily is to replace hard-coded values such as this with a token so that these values are pushed out of UrbanCode Deploy, and for different environments we can have different properties. So let's go and edit this file, and we'll replace this with the token. So I'll paste that in here. So here you can notice that the @ around the MySQL DB indicate that that is a token coming from UrbanCode Deploy. And I'm going to commit those changes. And once those changes are committed, UrbanCode Deploy will check GitLab on a regular basis, and if it sees a change to a file, it will kick off the process. So let's go back to UrbanCode Deploy and take a look at the configuration of my application. So if I click on configuration here, I will then pick my dev configuration under SockShop, and down here you'll see that I have a property called MySQLDB, and for the dev environment that is set to SocksDB. So that's the parameter that gets passed into that YAML file in GitLab and then deployed out to the application. So now we should be ready to go. So if I go to my dashboard here, I can see if there's any processes currently running in UrbanCode Deploy. There isn't one yet, but it should be starting up shortly because we made that change in GitLab. Okay, so our process has started here, and we can see what's going on with our process by clicking on the details button here. And you see that our containers haven't been deployed. Those are really quick because there's no changes to them. So it's currently making the changes to Docker Compose. If we go over to our server here and take a look, it's already done the shutdown of Docker Compose, and it will replace that YAML file, and it is now bringing Compose back up. So if we take a look again, yes, it's starting to come up, and it looks like our application is up and running now. So our API tests are running here, and they should be pretty quick. Okay, now our functional tests are starting up. If we switch over to the machine here, we will shortly see we'll see here that the processes are running. My functional tester is starting up. We don't actually see it come up. It all runs in the background. If I've got it set to run headless, you won't even see the Chrome browser show up on the machine. You will see it in the task manager here in a few minutes. We'll see, oh, so the run tests are running, good. And our that means our virtual services have started up. So again, if I take a look at my test control panel here, you'll see that my smoke test scenario has started. So that's starting my virtual services up. And my functional test will start going soon. You'll see the Chrome browser show up, and it will execute the tests, and then afterwards shut down the browsers and functional tester. Okay, there we see the Chrome driver showing up, so that is Selenium starting up. So WebUI runs its tests through Selenium, and now we've got the Chrome browser showing up, so now we are executing the tests against the browser. Again, we don't see the browser show up in the taskbar here. It's all running behind the scenes. We can still get screenshots out of it, and we can still execute the tests. It all completes like normal. We just don't see the Chrome browser. Okay, it's running a second test, it looks like now. The Chrome browser disappeared for a minute and then came back. And so pretty soon we should be done. So we're just going to let this run. Our performance test will take a little while to run as well. So we'll just skip ahead to when that's completed. Okay, so my functional and performance tests have completed now. You see that we have all green here, no red showing up, so that's a good sign. Let's just take a look at that log of functional tester. Make sure that these functional tests are passing now. So there is the catalog. The catalog is showing up properly. We are getting the proper pictures and the right number of products. We scroll down to the orders section. Yes, we do have orders showing up, and we're able to drill into an order and actually do verification points on totals and shipping and handling and so on. So great. Everything seems to be working fine. And then we have just done a deployment. So in review, we've used UrbanCode Deploy to deploy our application out to our Docker Compose environment. We are using GitLab to hold on to our source files, and we are using Rational Test Workbench to execute our tests against our application. Again, UrbanCode Deploy makes sure that it successfully deploys the application, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the application works. We need to use Test Workbench to make sure that everything is working properly. Thank you for your time. Hopefully this has been informative.